Good afternoon and welcome back to the webinar Shir on the topic of the week: how does our belief in Moshiach impact our daily life within halacha? And as I said on Monday, not all the examples that I'll bring are actually the halacha, are actually the law, and practically impact our life, but it's just amazing to see how these things are even a discussion, that because we are expecting the imminent arrival of Moshiach, therefore certain halachas, certain things in Jewish law will change as a result of that. So our first example today is regarding the Korban Omer. Just to give a little bit of background regarding this. So the Torah forbids us to eat from the new produce, from the new crop, until the second day of Pesach, where we bring a Korban Omer, the Omer offering, which was an offering of barley during the temple times. Now in the pasuk, in the verse where the Torah commands us this mitzvah, it gives us two time frames until when it is forbidden to eat from the new crop. It says until that day, implying till the beginning of the day of the second day of Pesach. And then it says until you bring the Korban Omer, until you bring the Omer sacrifice of barley. Only after that sacrifice you can now eat from the new crop. So which one is it? Is it the beginning of the day, or is it when you actually bring the sacrifice? So the Gemara explains like this, that it depends on which time period you're talking about. If it's during temple times, if the temple is still standing and we could bring sacrifices, so we need to wait until we bring the Omer sacrifice, and only then you can eat from the new crop, from the new produce. However, if there is no temple, so there will be no Omer sacrifice, it is enough to wait. As soon as the sun rises on the second day of Pesach, we can already eat from the new crop, from the new produce. However, the Gemara says that Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, the great sage Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai, made a takana, made a special enactment, and he said as follows: that even though with dry halacha, with halacha itself, you can eat nowadays when there is no temple, the new produce from the beginning of the day. However, he added an extra stringency, that nowadays when there's no temple, you actually need to wait till the end of the day, till the end of the second day of Pesach, and only then you can eat from the new produce which grew that year. Why? What's his reasoning? Because he says that maybe Moshiach will come within the next year. And then will come the second day of Pesach. And you'll say that last year I was already able to eat from the new crop from when the sun rose on the second day of Pesach. And you will not wait to bring the sacrifice, because there'll be a temple. Moshiach will be there, will be here, and you will not wait till you bring the sacrifice in order to eat from the new crop. Therefore, he says that even nowadays when there is no temple, although you are theoretically allowed to eat from the new produce as soon as the sun rises, nevertheless, you should wait till the end of the day, just in case Moshiach comes the next year, and therefore you'll remember not to eat from the new produce until you bring the Korban Omer. So again, an amazing law made by Rabbi Yochanan ben Zakkai out of the worry, or the good worry, that Mashiach will come in the following year and we might make a mistake based on that. The next example is in the concept of Meiser Behema. Meiser Behema means as follows: if somebody owns a lot of animals, what they need to do is gather all of their animals in a barn, into an enclosed place, and let the animals out one by one, and actually count 1, 2, 3, 4. The 10th animal, the verse says, V'ha'asiri yiyeh kodesh. The 10th animal is holy. It is considered Meiser Behema, the special sacrifice, which is brought from your own animals. The 10th animal, which walks out, every 10th animal, not only the first 10th, but then you start counting again, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, until you get to the next 10th. And every 10th animal is holy and needs to be brought up to the temple as a sacrifice. In theory, that law applies nowadays also, which would mean as follows: that you would need to gather all your animals in an enclosed area, count every 10th animal. The 10th animal would become holy. Now there's no temple, so we can't bring it as a sacrifice. So what do? you would need to wait till some sort of blemish is caused upon the animal, happens to the animal, some sort of blemish which disqualifies it from becoming a sacrifice, and then you can slaughter it and eat it for yourself, or use the wool, or have benefit from it for your own personal use. However, practically speaking, the Gemara says that we don't do it nowadays. The custom is not to do it nowadays. And the Gemara asks, why not? Why don't we separate Meiser Behema? Why don't we separate every 10th animal and wait till a mum, till a blemish becomes happens to the animal, and then we'll be able to eat it on our own? And the answer that the Gemara initially gives is because we are worried maybe you will transgress, maybe you won't wait till a blemish till something happens to the animal and a blemish falls upon the animal, and you'll slaughter it for your own personal benefit, and it comes out that you've just used an animal which is meant for a sacrifice, which is holy for your own personal benefit, without waiting for it to have a blemish. When the temple stood, so what you would do was you would take the 10th animal, every 10th animal, and straight away bring it up to the temple as a sacrifice. But nowadays, they have to actually wait a certain amount of time, and it's an indefinite amount of time. You don't know when it's going to happen. When something will happen to the animal that disqualifies it from being a sacrifice, who knows what will happen in that in between time? You might use it for your own benefit and transgress and use an animal which is designated for a sacrifice for your own personal benefit. And therefore we say, don't even separate it as a sacrifice, and that holiness will never come a part of it. Then the Gemara asks a question. Gemara says, I have a better idea. Instead of abolishing this whole concept of Meiser Behema, of taking every 10th animal and making it holy, why don't you, before you separate the animals, so it's not holy yet, cause a blemish to the would-be 10th animal, and then when it's separated as being the 10th animal, to begin with, it has a blemish. What did you gain? You gain that the mitzvah, the commandment of Meiser Behema, of taking every 10th animal, has not been abolished totally, because even when it has a blemish, it does retain some sort of holiness. But you also gain that there's nothing to worry about, because to begin with, as soon as it becomes the 10th, as soon as you've counted, you said 10, and it becomes holy, it already has a blemish, it already is disqualified for becoming a sacrifice, so there's no worry of any transgression. And the Gemara answers the obvious, because before you separate it, you have no idea which one will be the 10th. So how can you go and cause a blemish to the 10th animal before it's separated and becomes holy, if you don't know yet which one will be the 10th? But then the Gemara asks that I have a very good idea. Why don't you just cause a blemish to every single one of your animals? And therefore, no matter which animal will be the 10th, to begin with, it will have a blemish. You haven't abolished the idea of Meiser Behema, of taking an animal and designating it to be a sacrifice. But there's no worry of any transgression, because to begin with, it has a blemish, and therefore you can use it for your own personal benefit. And the Gemara answer is very powerful. That the reason why we can't make everybody cause a blemish to every single one of their animals is because what happens if Moshiach comes and we'll need to bring sacrifices? And everybody's animals will have blemishes. And therefore, we cannot do that, because that will disqualify every single animal from being a sacrifice. And just in case Moshiach comes, we need to have some animals which are ready to be brought as a sacrifice. So here we see again how the belief in the imminent arrival of Moshiach actually affects halacha. Our final example for today is based upon a law that the Rambam, Maimonides, brings. This Rambam is actually not talking about Moshiach at all. This law in the Rambam is talking about the laws of Para Aduma, the laws of the red cow, which, if a person became impure because of touching a dead body, there was a whole purification process. Part of that was that you would have to find a special red cow, very unique cow. It's very complex, all the laws which has to be by this cow. You would slaughter it and then burn it and use the ashes and sprinkle it upon this impure person, and that would purify them. And the Rambam says that because this is such a rare animal to find, in our entire history, since this commandment was given till today, we have only found 9 red cows. the one that Moshe Rabbeinu separated, and then he goes through a few of them. And then he says that the 10th Moshiach will find, and then he ends off that law with the following words. He says, Moshiach will find the 10th cow. Meheira yigale amen kein yehi ratzon. May he speedily be revealed. Amen, so shall be God's will. Now, the Rambam, in his introduction to his whole book, book of laws, he writes and he sets the goal for what the purpose of his writing, his work was. And he says that the purpose is to write a very concise sefer, a very concise book of laws, and he calls it halachas halachas. It is a book of laws to tell a Jew how to live his life in every aspect. The Rambam actually goes through the halachas, even the laws which are not necessarily relevant nowadays, even the laws which are only relevant during temple times or when Moshiach will come, but it's laws, purely laws. And the Rambam picks his words very, very carefully. He says clearly that he's trying to use the least amount of words as possible to be very concise. Therefore, the question is, what is this prayer of Meheira Yegala Amen Kein Yehi Ratzon, that since he happens to be talking about the 10th cow that Moshiach will find, where does the prayer come in over here that Moshiach should come speedily? This is not a prayer book. That it's a very nice thing that you mention Moshiach and you say, may he come speedily, but these are extra words that don't belong in a book of laws. Which law, which halacha, which mitzvah is the Rambam teaching? Regarding the obligation of believing in Moshiach, when the Rambam discusses the obligation to believe in Moshiach, he says like this. These are the Hebrew words which he says in his sefer. V'chol mi she'enoi mamin boy, whoever does not believe in the coming of Moshiach. And then he uses very powerful words, and he says, Ve'enoi mechake libi osoi, and does not await, does not yearn his coming. Who koifer b'toiras Moshe Rabbeinu. He says he is a heretic. He does not believe in the Torah of Moses, of Moshe Rabbeinu. Which means that we are not only obligated to believe in the coming of Mashiach, we are obligated to anticipate, to wait, to yearn for the coming of Mashiach. And just like the belief in Mashiach is a constant mitzvah, there's never a time where we don't believe in Mashiach. We always believe in Mashiach. So too the aspect of it which we wait for Moshiach has to be constant. And this is also based upon what we say every single day in the Amidah, the Shemona Esrei. Ki v'shu oscha kivinu kol hayoim. We yearn for your salvation. It doesn't say kol yoim every day. It says kol hayoim, the entire day, meaning all day. Not only every day, but the entire day, constantly. We constantly await the coming of Mashiach. And this is not just a nice thing, this is a halacha. This is a law. Why? Why are we constantly waiting for Mashiach? Because the truth is that without Mashiach, our mitzvahs, our fulfilling God's commandments are incomplete. We cannot bring sacrifices. We can't do the mitzvahs properly. We are incomplete without Mashiach. And therefore, whenever we mention something that we can't have now, and we can only have when Mashiach will come, that should automatically bring about a yearning and a prayer that Mashiach should come speedily. And that is what the Rambam is teaching me here. He's teaching me here when he mentions the Parah Aduma, the red cow, which we don't have nowadays, which the 10th red cow, the 10th Parah Aduma, will only Mashiach will find. He teaches us a law. It's not just a nice prayer. The law is that you have to be mechake libiyasa. You have to yearn for Mashiach's coming. And therefore, as soon as you mention something to do with Mashiach, this is not the laws of Mashiach, this is the laws of Parah Aduma, this is the laws of the red cow. But it can only happen when Mashiach will come. We are obligated to feel the anticipation, we are obligated to feel a yearning for Mashiach to come and complete our fulfillment of keeping God's commandments in a full and complete way. And may that happen speedily in our days. Have a good day.